Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I was making steak and roasted potatoes that Sunday night when Bianca walked in, arms crossed like she was about to announce a verdict. We had been married 6 years, together almost 10, and lately things had felt routine but manageable. I figured it was just a phase. I had no idea she was about to burn the whole thing down. She didn't sit, didn't smile. She just stood there by the counter. "Stanley, we need to talk." Her tone was sharp, rehearsed. I set the knife down and waited. She hovered in the doorway for a moment, arms folded tight across her chest, eyes flicking between me and the stove like she was working up the courage to say something she had already decided. "I'm not happy," she started. The words came out flat, but her jaw was clenched. "Things between us. They feel stale, like I'm stuck in a loop. I've been carrying this around for a while." I kept silent, giving her space. The air in the kitchen was heavy, the smell of garlic and butter suddenly overwhelming. "I've been thinking a lot about my life," she continued, shifting from foot to foot. "What I want, what I need. And the truth is, I feel trapped." My chest tightened. "Trapped how?" "We can work on it. If something's wrong, we can fix it. Counseling, time away, whatever it takes." She shook her head, lips pressed thin. "It's more than that. I don't want therapy or a vacation. I want freedom. I want an open relationship." The words hung between us like smoke. I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard, my mind scrambling for footing. Before I could even form a response, she added the knife twist. "And I'm starting tonight. With Ethan." The words hit like a hammer. Ethan Miller. My best friend since high school. The guy who helped me move into this house, who stood beside me as best man at our wedding. I looked at her carefully, searching for some trace of guilt. Instead, she wore a smug little smirk, like she had checkmated me in one move. "With Ethan," I repeated slowly. She nodded. "Yes. He understands me in ways you don't. I don't want to hide it. I want to be honest." Inside, I felt the floor drop out. But outside, I stayed perfectly calm. I knew showing any weakness would only fuel her. "Okay," I said evenly. "Nothing else. Just that one word." Bianca's smirk widened. "That was easier than I thought. He's picking me up at 8. She turned on her heel, humming as she went upstairs to change. I stood in the kitchen and let the reality sink in. This wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration of war. And if she wanted to play games, I would make sure she learned what open really meant. The moment the front door closed behind Bianca, the house went quiet. I sat down at the table. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of pacing the floor, waiting for her return. If Bianca thought I would sit here like a fool while she went off with Ethan, she had underestimated me. She'd just set new rules. My job now was to play by them better than she ever could. I took out my phone and scrolled through old contacts until I found a name I hadn't called in years, Larissa Chen, my ex. Bianca always bristled when Larissa came up, even in passing. Larissa was independent, successful, and confident, qualities Bianca envied but never admitted out loud. I hit dial. "Hello?" Her voice was warm, surprised. "Larissa, it's Stanley," I said. "Been a long time." "Well, this is unexpected," she replied with a small laugh. "What's going on?" I leaned back in my chair. "This might sound strange, but I could use some company this week. How would you feel about coming to stay for a few days? I'll cover your flight. No pressure, just a change of scenery." There was a pause. "Stanley, is this about Bianca?" "Let's just say she made a decision tonight." "I'd rather explain in person," I said. Larissa thought for a beat. "All right, I'll come. Send me the details." After we hung up, I booked her ticket for the next morning. First class. If Bianca wanted to rub Ethan in my face, she'd soon see how it felt when the shoe was on the other foot. The house was mine, inherited from my father, in my name alone. No joint mortgage, no shared accounts. That separation of finances, something Bianca once complained about, now worked in my favor. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window. Bianca had drawn her battle line. Tomorrow, she'd learn I wasn't afraid to draw mine. Larissa's flight landed early Monday morning. By 10 o'clock, she was sitting in my living room with a mug of green tea, her suitcase neatly tucked by the wall. She looked even sharper than I remembered. We spent the day catching up, talking about her design firm and travels. Nothing romantic, just easy conversation. Still, I knew exactly how it would look when Bianca came home. That was the point. Sure enough, just past midnight, the front door opened. Bianca breezed in, a bright grin plastered on her face. Then she froze. Her eyes landed on Larissa, sitting comfortably on the couch beside me. "What the hell is she doing here?" Bianca snapped. I looked up, kept my voice steady. "Bianca, you remember Larissa. I invited her for the week." Bianca's smile dropped. "You can't be serious. She's your ex." I leaned back in my chair. "You said we're in an open relationship now. I'm just following your rules." Her jaw tightened. "It's not the same, Stanley. Ethan is different." Larissa sipped her tea, calm as ever. "Nice to see you, Bianca." Bianca's glare could have cut glass. "This is disrespectful. I live here too." I shook my head. "Correction. You decided to change the terms of our marriage without discussion. I'm playing by those terms, and unlike Ethan, Larissa isn't sneaking behind anyone's back." Bianca's phone buzzed. She answered it. Ethan's voice came through, nervous. "Hey, you okay? Should I come in?" Bianca snapped, "Yes, come inside." I spoke before she could move. "No, he's not coming in. This is my house. You want to see him? Do it somewhere else. Not under this roof." There was a pause on the line. Then Ethan muttered, "Bianca, maybe this isn't a good idea," before hanging up. Bianca's face flushed red. She spun, stormed up the stairs, and slammed the bedroom door so hard the frame rattled. I glanced at Larissa. She gave a small shrug. "Well," she said, "that was dramatic." I smiled thinly. "And it's just the beginning." The next morning, Bianca came downstairs with dark circles under her eyes. She barely looked at me, her attention fixed on Larissa, who was sipping coffee at the table. "This isn't going to work," Bianca said coldly. "She can't stay here." "She's my guest," I replied evenly. "You brought Ethan into this the moment you laid down your new rules. Now you're seeing how those rules apply both ways." Her hands clenched into fists. "Ethan isn't living here. You moved your ex into our house. That's not the same thing." I set my cup down. "The difference is, Ethan was my best friend. You chose him to twist the knife. Larissa's presence is nothing more than balance." Bianca's face flushed. She spun around, muttering, then spent the day slamming doors, moving things around, and making petty little power plays. Larissa never rose to the bait. She stayed polite, calm, and almost amused. "She really doesn't like me," she whispered to me once while Bianca stormed through the hallway. "She never has," I said. "That's exactly why you being here matters." By Wednesday evening, Bianca tried a different tactic. She leaned against the doorway, feigning calm. "Stanley, listen. If you want this openness, fine, but not with her. She's here to drive me out." I met her eyes. "Bianca, you made the rules. You don't get to adjust them only when they hurt." Her smirk flickered, replaced by tight anger. "You're doing this to punish me." "No," I said flatly. "I'm doing this because you showed me what you really think of our marriage. I'm simply playing the game you started." Bianca's jaw clenched. Without another word, she stormed off again, her footsteps echoing up the stairs. Larissa looked at me and raised her brows. "This is only going to escalate, isn't it?" I nodded once. "Oh, it's just warming up." By Thursday, Bianca stopped pretending. She'd given up on slamming doors or fake smiles. Instead, she tried something uglier. That afternoon, my manager called me into his office. He slid a printed email across the desk. "Stanley, this came to HR this morning," he said. "The message accused me of inflating invoices and creating a toxic environment at home that was spilling into work. It even hinted I might be abusing alcohol. Anonymous, but the language was unmistakably Bianca's." I read it once, then set it down. "This is personal," I said calmly. "My wife and I are in the middle of a collapse. None of this is true." My manager studied me for a long moment. "We'll need to document it, but your record speaks for itself. Just be aware. Someone is trying to sink you." I nodded. "I know exactly who." When I got home, Bianca was waiting in the kitchen, arms folded. "How was work?" she asked, eyes sharp. I looked her dead in the eye. "If you thought that email would scare me, it didn't. All you did was prove how far you're willing to go." For the first time, I saw her flinch. Then she laughed bitterly. Paranoid much? Maybe people are finally seeing the real you. I didn't argue. Instead, I called Marisol Patel, an attorney a colleague recommended. I explained everything: the house deed in my name, separate finances, Bianca's behavior, and the sabotage attempt. Marisol didn't hesitate. She has no legal claim to the house. You need to serve her notice to leave. Do it formally so there's no gray area. The next morning, I drafted the papers with Marisol's help. I also spoke to Emmett Ruiz, my neighbor and a longtime friend. I might need a witness if things get loud, I told him. Emmett agreed without hesitation. When I walked back into the house, Bianca was on the phone, speaking loudly enough for me to hear. Yes, Ethan, he's losing it. He won't last. Just give it time. That evening, Bianca came downstairs to find me sitting at the dining table. The envelope was in front of me. She froze when she saw it. What's this supposed to be? She asked. Notice, I said calmly. You've got 48 hours to collect your essentials. After that, we'll arrange a pickup for the rest. You're not living here anymore. Her mouth fell open. You can't kick me out. This is my home, too. I shook my head. No. The deed is in my name alone. I verified it with an attorney. You've spent months making choices that broke this marriage. Now you'll live with them. Bianca's face shifted from shock to rage. This is about Larissa, isn't it? You want her here. You're throwing me out so you can replace me with her. I leaned back in my chair. Wrong. Larissa leaves on Sunday. She's a guest, nothing more. This is about respect, and you lost mine the second you went after Ethan. At the mention of his name, Bianca's voice cracked. Ethan cares about me. He actually listens. As if on cue, her phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with Ethan's name. She grabbed it, answered loudly. Ethan, he's trying to evict me. A muffled voice replied, not loud enough for me to catch every word. Then Bianca's face twisted. What do you mean you can't do this anymore? She stepped into the hallway, but I still heard him. I didn't sign up to be the reason your marriage explodes. I'm out, Bianca. Don't call me again. The line went dead. Bianca stood frozen, clutching the phone. When she turned back to me, her eyes were wild. This is your fault. You poisoned him against me. I didn't move. No, Bianca. Ethan saw what you really are, just like I did. She screamed, slammed the phone on the counter, and stormed upstairs. Doors slammed, drawers opened, luggage zippers rasped. I poured myself a drink and waited. 48 hours. Then it would be over. By Sunday evening, Bianca was gone. She packed 2 suitcases, muttered curses under her breath, and left without looking at me. She went to her sister Nora's apartment across town. The silence that followed was the first real peace I'd felt in months. As for Larissa, she left that same evening just like we planned. Before she walked out the door, she handed me her business card. You don't need me complicating this further, she said. But if you ever want a friend to talk to, I'm here. Thanks for coming, I said. You helped more than you know. After she left, I walked through the house, room by room. It was lighter. Bianca could try lawyers, gossip, whatever tricks she wanted. The truth was simple. She'd lost her place here the moment she chose Ethan over her marriage. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. The fallout was just another step toward closing the door for good. That Monday, I called Marisol again. Let's file, I told her. I want the divorce formalized. She didn't ask why. She just said, good. I'll start the paperwork today. 3 days later, a letter from her attorney arrived, demanding spousal support and half the value of the house. According to her, she had contributed emotionally and therefore deserved financial compensation. I forwarded the letter to Marisol. She called me within the hour. Stanley, this is empty posturing. The house is protected under your father's trust. Your finances are separate. And frankly, her behavior, sabotage attempts, the affair, works in your favor if this escalates. She has no leverage. So she gets nothing? Not a dime, Marisol confirmed. Meanwhile, word spread among our friends. Bianca spun her version of events, that I was controlling, that I threw her out for no reason, that Larissa had manipulated me. A handful of people bought it. They stopped returning my calls, but the ones who mattered saw through it. Ethan never reached out again. Mutual acquaintances told me he'd gone quiet, embarrassed. Whatever fantasy Bianca had built with him collapsed the second reality hit. 2 months later, the house was quiet, steady. Bianca had moved back in with her parents after Nora grew tired of her constant drama. The legal attempts fizzled when Marisol sent over the trust papers and proof of Bianca's sabotage. Her lawyer stopped replying after that. I spent those weeks reclaiming my space. I painted the spare room, turned it into a small gym, and replaced the bedroom furniture Bianca had picked out years ago. Every change felt like taking back ground she had tried to occupy. One Friday night, I cooked dinner the same way I had on the night this all began. I sat down alone, plate in front of me, and it was peaceful. Halfway through the meal, my phone lit up on the table. A text from Bianca. "Can we talk?" I watched the screen until the glow faded. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. She wanted an open relationship. She wanted to start it with my best friend. She thought I would roll over and watch her take everything. Instead, I showed her what openness really meant. I opened the door and pointed her through it. That night, I finished my dinner, put the dishes away, and looked around at the space I had rebuilt. Bianca's clothes, her perfume bottles, her scattered chaos, gone. In their place was order, calm, and the reminder that I never needed to beg for respect. Bianca thought she had all the power. In the end, she left with nothing but excuses, and I stayed with everything that mattered: my peace, my home, and my self-respect. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I used to lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks like a map, trying to figure out how my life managed to shift so suddenly. Back then, everything looked solid on the surface. I was 3 weeks away from marrying Vivian, the woman I thought I'd grow old with. The invitations had gone out, deposits were paid, and both families were waiting for the big day. On paper, it all looked perfect. We had been together for 4 years. I wasn't the type to talk about soulmates, but if I ever believed in that kind of thing, Vivian would have been it. She had a sharp sense of humor, a way of making people lean in when she spoke, and she knew how to push me just enough without breaking me. For a long time, I thought that balance was unshakable. But in those last few months, something in her shifted. She wasn't cold, not exactly, just elsewhere. She started staying late at the design agency where she worked, talking about late workshops and brand collabs. She was glued to her phone more than usual, flipping it over whenever I walked by, and one night, I realized she had added a lock code she never used before. I asked about it once, halfway through dinner. "Why the sudden security?" I said, nodding at her phone. She didn't flinch. "Clients' files. Some of it's confidential." I left it there. I wanted to believe her. One Friday night, she pushed her plate aside and leaned back in her chair. "The agency's running late workshops again. Don't wait up." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do workshops run until sunrise?" She smirked, grabbing her wine glass. "Since clients started paying for overtime." I let the conversation drop, but the thought stuck with me long after. It wasn't the words. It was the way she said them, with that dismissive confidence, like she knew I wouldn't push further. I didn't that night, but I filed it away because something in me knew it wasn't the last time I'd hear an excuse like that. It was a Friday when she mentioned it again, but this time she didn't call it a workshop. "Girls' night," she said casually, slipping into a black dress I hadn't seen before. "Maya and some of the other friends want to blow off steam." Nothing major. I nodded, but the knot in my chest tightened. "Where at?" She clipped on earrings, glancing at me in the mirror. "A friend's place." "You don't know her." That answer didn't sit right, but I kept my voice level. "All right, have fun." She kissed me on the cheek and walked out the door like everything was normal. I sat in the silence for an hour before I admitted to myself that I wasn't going to sleep. At 1 in the morning, I opened our rideshare app. Her last trip showed a drop-off at an address I didn't recognize. Not a bar, not a club, a townhouse across town. I drove there. The street was quiet except for one house spilling light and bass into the night. Cars lined the curb. Through the windows, I caught flashes of movement, music, and shadows dancing. It wasn't a bachelorette send-off. It wasn't a girls' night. It was a private party. I didn't go in. I sat in my car across the street, hands gripping the wheel so tightly. I could have walked up and knocked, could have made a scene. But instead, I drove home. At dawn, the lock clicked and Vivian crept in, heels dangling from her hand. She smelled faintly of cologne, not hers. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter like it had been any other Friday. "How was the night?" I asked, keeping my tone light. She didn't blink. "Fun. Just us girls." "At whose place?" She hesitated just long enough. "A friend you don't know." "Don't overthink it, Jake." She gave me a smile, small and practiced, then disappeared into the bedroom. And I sat there, staring at the empty glass she'd left behind, knowing I'd just caught the first glimpse of the truth. I told myself I could let it go, that maybe I was being paranoid. But the seed had already been planted, and it kept growing. Every time her phone buzzed, every time she slipped out with that easy excuse, I felt the same pull in my chest. The moment of truth came 2 weeks later. She left for work in a rush and forgot to close her laptop. We'd synced devices months back to manage bills and wedding files, so her messages still popped up there. I wasn't looking for anything, but when the screen lit up, a notification caught my eye. From a group chat I didn't recognize. The first message hit like a brick. "Last night was wild. Glad she finally showed." Another chimed in. "Told you she'd loosen up. She'll be back." There were pictures too. Vivian standing in a corner of a crowded townhouse, holding a drink, laughing. She looked relaxed, free, happier than she had in weeks, and none of the faces around her were anyone I knew. My chest tightened. I scrolled further. That's when I found the direct messages. Lucien Morel. The name I remembered only faintly. He was a DJ she'd once mentioned while talking about a brand campaign. "Last night with you was wild. Can't stop thinking about it," he had written. Her reply came fast, teasing. "You're dangerous." But I liked it. My hand shook as I scrolled, but I took screenshots of everything. Every message, every photo, every detail. I wasn't going to confront her with suspicion. I needed proof. I set the phone down on the counter, my hand shaking for the first time in years. There was no misreading this, no excuse that could bury it. Vivian hadn't just stumbled into a party. She had chosen it. That evening, when she came home, she acted like nothing had changed. She tossed her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and asked, "What's for dinner?" I studied her. For a moment, I thought about asking right there. But instead, I answered calmly, "Haven't decided yet." She didn't notice the difference in my voice. That was the night I stopped wondering if I was imagining things. I wasn't. I had proof, and it meant it was time to plan. The question wasn't if I'd leave, it was how. I wasn't going to scream. That would give her control. Let her paint me as the angry man who couldn't handle the truth. No, if Vivian could sneak around behind my back, then I could disappear right under hers. The first step was money. I moved most of my savings into a new account in my name only, quiet and untraceable. The wedding fund we shared, I let it sit there, knowing she'd eventually see it vanish when the vendors started canceling. Next was the apartment. The lease was under my name, which meant I could end it without her knowing until the notice hit the landlord's inbox. I scheduled it for the last possible day before our wedding. She'd never see it coming. I needed legal cover too. I met with Mara Quinn, an attorney whom an old college friend once recommended. I sat across from her and laid out the situation in plain words. No dramatics, no self-pity. She leaned back, folding her arms. "No marriage license filed yet, no joint property, no prenup. You can walk away clean. But you need to prepare for her to come after you emotionally. Guilt, anger, maybe even reputation. I'm not worried about her words," I told her. "Just her access." After that, I called Rowan Hale, the one person I trusted without question. Rowan worked in logistics, a man who could make a truck vanish overnight if necessary. When I laid out everything, the line went silent. He understood what I was saying without me spelling it out. Rowan knew I wasn't asking for advice. I was setting a course. He accepted it in his quiet way, and within minutes, he was already thinking ahead, offering me storage and a place to stay. Nothing permanent, just enough to get my head straight. By the time I hung up, I had what I needed. The plan was no longer just an idea. It was in motion. I'd let her keep playing her role, pretending everything was fine. But when I left, I'd leave nothing for her to hold on to. Not the apartment, not the wedding, not me. I decided she'd get one conversation, not an argument, not a shouting match, just a controlled exchange on my terms. I printed the screenshots, tucked them into a plain folder, and waited until she came home from work. Vivian dropped her bag by the door and kicked off her heels like always. "Hey," she said, walking toward the kitchen. "You eat yet?" "Sit down," I told her. Something in my tone made her pause. She pulled out a chair, sat slowly. "What's this about?" I slid the folder across the table. "I'm going to ask questions once. If the answers wander, this conversation ends." She opened it. Photos, messages, addresses. Her face went pale, then hardened. "You went through my phone?" "I went through the evidence you left in plain sight." I kept my voice steady. "So, what do you want to say?" Her first move was denial. "These are just parties, Jake. Everyone was there. You're twisting this." Then minimization. "It wasn't like that. We kissed, that's all. You're blowing it out of proportion." Finally, blame. "If you weren't so controlling, maybe I wouldn't need to—" I cut her off. "This isn't about me. This is about you choosing someone else while planning a wedding with me." She stared at me, lips tight, searching for the right angle. "I'm not here to debate feelings," I said. "I'm here to end a contract. There won't be a wedding." Her eyes widened, but she forced a laugh. "You're not serious." "Everything's paid for, Jake. Our families—" I stood. "You'll tell your side whatever you like. I'll tell mine the truth. It's over." I didn't wait for more excuses. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed the small duffel I'd packed, and headed for the door. She called after me, her voice sharp, desperate. "Jake, don't do this. We can fix it." But I didn't answer. Some things don't get fixed. That night, I left the apartment and didn't look back. Rowan met me 2 blocks away, his old pickup waiting at the curb. He didn't ask questions. By morning, the messages started. First, a dozen texts from Vivian, all frantic. "Where are you? We need to talk. Please, Jake, don't throw this away." Then came the voicemails, her voice cracking, begging me to pick up. By the end of the day, the tone shifted. "You're being ridiculous. One mistake and you're walking out like a coward?" I ignored them all. The next day, my phone rang again, this time a number I recognized. Her mother, Marjorie Lane. I answered, keeping my tone polite. "Jake, what's going on?" Marjorie's voice was sharp, but edged with panic. "Vivian says you called off the wedding. Is this true?" "Yes," I said simply. "Why? Did you two fight?" "This is madness. The invitations are out." "There won't be a wedding," I cut in, calm and final. "I won't discuss details." "I wish you well, Marjorie." I ended the call before she could press further. I spent those first days in Rowan's loft, sleeping on a futon surrounded by boxes of his old gear. It wasn't comfortable, but it was far enough from the life I just burned down. Once the dust settled, I got to work cutting every thread that still tied me to her. The joint accounts were the first to go. I closed them all in one morning, transferring my share into the private account I'd already set up. Next came subscriptions, vendor contracts, and the venue. I sent formal cancellations, one by one, until the list was empty. Then I drafted a short message to our wedding guests. "The event is canceled. Thank you for your understanding." That was it. No details, no gossip to feed on. Just a door slammed shut. The next step was legal. Mara arranged a neutral office downtown. Vivian sat across from me, arms folded, glaring. Mara slid the papers across the table. "This dissolves any shared contracts and clears financial obligations," Mara explained. "Once you sign, both parties are free." Vivian's eyes snapped to mine. "You're punishing me." I kept my voice even. "I'm protecting myself." "You'll regret this," she spat. "I already regret trusting you," I replied. Her hand trembled as she scrawled her name across the pages. I slid a single letter across in return. Logistics only. No accusations, no pleas. Just finality. When the meeting ended, I stood and walked out without another glance. The sound of the door clicking shut behind me was the only closure I needed. I left the city the same night the papers were signed. Rowan handed me the keys to a rental cabin he'd arranged through a cousin, tucked into the woods 2 hours north. It wasn't much. Bare walls, a creaky bed, a stove that took forever to heat. But it was quiet, and that was all I wanted. The first few nights, I barely slept. My phone buzzed on the table, screen lighting up every hour with new messages from Vivian. They started soft, pleading, bargaining, then shifted to rage. "You're a coward. You'll never find someone like me." I deleted them all without opening. By the end of the week, I powered the phone down completely. The silence that followed was strange at first, almost unbearable. But slowly, it started to feel like breathing after holding it too long. I sat on the porch with coffee in the mornings, watched the trees sway, and let the quiet settle into me. Not long after, word got back to me that Vivian's world wasn't holding together the way she'd expected. She'd leaned on Lucian once the wedding fell apart, but that spark she thought was dangerous and exciting didn't last. He was a party man, drifting from one scene to the next, never staying long enough to carry the weight of someone else's collapse. Within weeks, their connection fizzled. Meanwhile, I moved into a small apartment of my own. Barely enough space for a couch and a bed. I kept things simple. One set of dishes, a workbench Rowan helped me assemble. One afternoon, my phone lit up again. A final text from Vivian. "Someday you'll see you overreacted." I archived it without a reply. That was the last time her name crossed my screen. That night, I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling of the new place. Different cracks this time, a new map. I started counting them, like I used to. But somewhere before I reached 10, sleep finally came. I had caught her at a secret party, called off the wedding, and vanished. It sounded dramatic when I said it in my head, like something out of a movie. But to me, it was simpler than that. It was survival. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like freedom. Thank you for watching.